and improvements in 12 symptoms on the medical symptom checklist. And a couple key ones of those are headaches, nausea, GI problems, pain, insomnia, and fatigue, which we get a lot of those complaints in these groups. Those are, really hinder people's well-being, and all of these tend to improve after the course of the groups. In terms of heart health, this is a different type of study looking at a specific population. And this was an 8-week intervention. It was individualized, so people, it wasn't a group format. People would still do, though, the practices on a daily basis for 20 minutes a day. There were 61 people per group, and the control group was comprised of sort of promoting healthy lifestyle choices. So they taught people to proper nutrition, decreasing salt intake, exercise, basically your standard guidelines from the American Heart Association. It was looking at people with isolated systolic hypertension, which is particularly difficult to treat. So this is people who, if you need a quick refresher, there's your systolic and diastolic blood pressure. The top number, the higher number is systolic, lower number is diastolic. And so there, especially in elder populations, there are a lot of people who have high systolic but not too high diastolic blood pressure. And this is particularly, this tends to lead to a lot of cardiovascular disease. And it's harder to treat with medications, and medications, as always, can have lots of side effects. So there's a lot of interest in figuring out ways to help people lower their systolic blood pressure. The measures in the study was the blood pressure itself and the hypertensive medication. And to be in the study, you had to be over 55, have a systolic blood pressure between 140 and 160, and diastolic blood pressure less than 90, and had to be on at least 2 hypertensive medications. And here's just a breakdown of the way the study was set up. So of the 122 patients who were randomized, 61 were in the RRR group, 61 were in the control group that I discussed. It was an intent to treat analysis, so that's a more conservative way of testing. It's when basically we looked at the data from all 61 participants in each group. So even if people dropped out, which about 5 or 6 did in each group, you still include their data. So you basically use their blood pressure from the first measurement from before the study. So it's more conservative because you would assume that most people doing the study would decrease their blood pressure. And this data point is going to have just their initial blood pressure as both their initial and final. So it is a more conservative test. So then, so there was that analysis of the blood pressure, and then there was a secondary phase which involved elimination of a hypertensive medication. So if people were able to lower their blood pressure below 140, just double check that. Yeah. If they were able to lower their systolic blood pressure below 140 and had a change of more than 5 millimeters of mercury, then they were able to, they slowly tried to take them off their antihypertensive medication and looked at whether people were able to maintain that blood pressure even when they decreased their medication. What they found is that both groups did lower their blood pressure significantly. It was about 10 in both groups, going from about 145 on average to about 135. And that was for systolic and diastolic drops, about 2 points for each group. So both, I think this is very encouraging that teaching people to elicit the relaxation response was as effective as changing your diet and exercising more. Additionally, the patients who were in the relaxation response group were 4 times more likely to successfully eliminate this antihypertensive medication. So, again, a lot of these medications have side effects, and so it's great that these people were actually able to safely come off of some of their medications. In terms of an interesting point is one of the ideas of how the mechanism is working is that they actually, even though both groups were effective in decreasing their blood pressure, that they were different mechanisms. So the control group, it was thought it's the diet and exercise that contributed to the decrease in blood pressure. Whereas in the relaxation response group, if you remember at the beginning when I said that increasing nitric oxide is one of the physiological characteristics of the relaxation response. Also, a lot of these antihypertensive medications work by increasing nitric oxide, and that changes. It allows your veins to dilate, and so it decreases your blood pressure. And the idea is that that might be a mechanism, and perhaps one of the reasons why the active group was more likely to be able to come off those medications. But this is something that we'll want to investigate further in future studies.
How much practice were they asked to do?
This was, for the intervention group, it was 20 minutes a day for the 8 weeks, which is our standard. Yeah.
The sustained effect? You follow the people after they're done with their intensive program?
Right, yeah, this one hasn't done, we haven't done a long-term follow-up, and I hope that we get a chance to, because yeah, that'll be very interesting to see. And so the last study, this is an ongoing study. You guys get a sneak peek, and it's being, the data is going to be presented at the Digestive Disease Week conference, which is in May. And so I have some preliminary data to show you, and we're running another group at the moment, but I'll show you what we have so far. Just some background first. This was a study that came out in PLOS1 in 2008, which was showing that the relaxation response actually may lead to changes in gene expression, which was a very exciting study. They looked at both long-term meditators and people who went through an 8-week intervention, and they had significant changes in gene expression related to cellular metabolism, oxidative phosphorylation, and response to oxidative stress. And so this, it encouraged us to pursue this avenue of research to continue to look at gene expression. So this study was looking at both some of the symptoms that I was talking about earlier and these gene expression studies. So our current direction is really targeting specific populations, but also trying to figure out how can we improve their quality of life and their symptoms, but also what's going on. And so this was looking, it was a 10-week mind-body group intervention. It was looking at quality of life for subjects who have irritable bowel syndrome and inflammatory bowel disease, which are two GI problems.
Is that Crohn's disease, the second one?
Yeah, irritable bowel disease, inflammatory bowel disease is Crohn's and colitis. And we're looking at whether the program makes people feel better and whether it's helping with inflammatory markers and with gene expression changes. And we don't yet have the inflammatory marker data, but we have so far significant improvements in IBS quality of life, which were both statistically and clinically significant. And we're getting trends for the IBD quality of life. Like I said, we're running another group. And in terms of gene expression, there are both distinct and overlapping patterns. And NF-kappa B emerged as a common focus molecule, which has been implemented in inflammatory diseases. Yes.
Oh, that was actually a 5-minute, not a